Hockey Inside Out, presented to you by the Montreal Gazette.
Welcome to the Hockey Inside Out show. I'm Montreal Gazette Managing Editor Michelle Richardson. Sports Editor Stu Cowan's out with a lower body injury this week, but I'm joined by regulars Chris Nyland, Mike Boone, and Jessica Rusnak from TSN 690. So I think the Habs looked pretty solid in Florida, but the question on everybody's mind is Max Pacioretty. How deep can the Habs go if he's out for any amount of time?
Well, how deep can they go in the playoffs? Even if he was in there, I don't know how deep they could go the way they've been playing. So that seems to compound it now with Max being out. We're not sure what's apparently a concussion, but he has a miraculous way of healing. So, you know, I don't know. My gut was telling me I think he'd be back for the playoffs, but I could easily be wrong, and they could miss him. And they will miss the goal scoring, but when a guy like that goes down, other people have to step up.
And the nickname, I think it's a dilemma for other teams because they would tend to focus their defense on Pacioretty. Now, if he's out, who are they going to focus on? Nobody else can score.
Galchenyuk.
But the thing I think we have to remember is last year, Pacioretty didn't have the greatest performance in the playoffs, and the team was still able to go further. I know that was also, which was crazy, the first time he ever partaked in the playoffs because he was injured beforehand. But I think that, you know, if he is injured and has to miss a little bit, I don't necessarily think it's the end of the world. That I think that other guys can step up and raise, and that's just going to be another challenge for this team. And I think that's something that's been lacking with the Canadiens is this challenge, because they've known for about a month or so now that they've been making the playoffs. So I think if they have one of their key players down, that other guys, as you mentioned, will rise. But Max is known as the Wolverine, so he might be back on Saturday. Who knows?
I don't think it's the fatal blow to the extent that Price or PK or Markov would be.
Let's talk about the power play for a second, and I guess
let's not. It's too sad.
It's a bit of an enigma, but Jessica, Michel Therrien must be getting a little testy when talking about the subject. What can you tell us?
I think it is that he doesn't really have any answers for when it comes to the power play, that we have seen glimpses that it's worked, but for the most part, it hasn't been a consistent factor throughout the years. And that's something that's unusual with the Montreal Canadiens because they've always been known for having a strong power play. But the number one thing that Michel Therrien has always said is that the power play isn't expected to score every single time, but it needs to be able to create momentum. And I don't think it's been able to create any momentum at all. So that's something that I don't think at this point in the season that they're going to solve going into the playoffs, that it's just something that they're going to have to work around, that their power play isn't threatening, and other teams might take advantage of that because they'll sit in the box for 2 minutes and might, you know, injure another player, but it's no sweat off their back because most likely the Canadiens won't score on that.
That was quite an observation by the coach, that it doesn't have to score every time. I think we're only asking for about 20%, maybe up over 20%. And, you know, with the personnel they have on that power play, it should be a whole lot better. So what's it come down to? Yeah, the personnel is to blame somewhat. System is to blame somewhat. And the coach has to take blame there for such an abysmal power play, especially with the talent they have. We're talking about two of the best offensive defensemen in the league, in Markov and Subban. And Pacioretty is the shooter there. How can they not find a way to score goals?
Would you say then in the offseason that would be something to address? Because I know last year Gerard Gallant was in charge of it. Before that, it was Kirk Muller. Would that be someone that you would think they would need to bring another coach that is, you know, quote unquote power play specialist?
Possibly, but you know, the head coach is ultimately responsible, so it falls back on him. You can say Kirk Muller, you can say JJ Daniel, the other guy there now, what's his name?
Dan Lacroix.
Oh, Dan Lacroix.
He's the one that's going to have to fall on his sword, though.
Yeah, but again, it's ultimately the head coach's responsibility.
Carey Price has been knocked around quite a bit lately. Who needs to step up to protect this MVP goalie?
Well, you know, I honestly, I don't know if anybody does or anybody can. Anytime he gets hit, nobody really does anything. And I think a lot of that comes from him. I think he said, hey, listen, guys, I can take a bump. I can take when guys hit me. Don't take a stupid penalty. He probably tells them. I mean, I've heard him say it. He's been quoted in the newspapers saying it. But, you know, I don't know if they have the people to really do that. Is somebody going to step forward as a defenseman and take a shot at someone after he gets hit? I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if I will. Now, that being said, do they have big enough defenders to protect him? Those guys are thinking of getting the puck and moving more than clearing guys out in front of the net.
Yeah, I don't think they can. I mean, what can they do? Size is an issue all the way through the lineup. They don't have Chara to take care of Price on the back end.
But I agree with you, Chris, that it's kind of his personality. He's a little bit more laid back. If you look at Ben Bishop, the goaltender for the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially when he's played against the Canadiens, they've been able to get to him. And he has this feistiness to him that he comes back and he wants to defend himself. But I think because of Price's personality, and we have seen it in the past from Price, him sort of want to take ownership or try to get involved. But I think he's just kind of realized that, you know what, I'm a big boy, I can handle it until a situation occurs. He'll just kind of let it slide off his back.
He has to get in touch with his inner Ron Hextall.
Yes.
Do you think it's a gamble putting him in nets on Saturday?
You know what? I wouldn't, just because of how those games go with Toronto, that sometimes people can lose their cool and maybe not do the most sportsman-like type of way that you're supposed to play.
Toronto got rid of all them guys, though. They were all down in the minors, retired. I don't know if I would worry so much about that. I would, if I was coach, I would speak to him about it. Listen, is this important to you, this record? And if he gets it Thursday, fine, then you don't play him. If he doesn't, then you got to sit down and say, hey, do you want to play this game, or would you rather have the night off? That's how I would approach it with my number one goalie. I'd leave it in his hands. And again, he may want to play that last game just so he can be sharp and ready for Wednesday.
Yeah, he'd be off for a week otherwise.
Yeah, you still have time off. So what's another day?
We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. So Devontae Smith-Pelly scored his first goal as a Habs against Florida, but he still seems very much to be a work in progress. What are your thoughts?
Well,
Chris.
We talk about this quite a bit, but listen, the kid he thinks a good game. Like, he gets out there. I know he wants to get there. I think he understands the game. He understands the system. It's a question of getting there. I think he's just a little bit too late at times getting there. He's a guy who can plant himself in front of the net and hold ground in front of the net, which is a good thing. On the power play, 5-on-5, it can be a good thing. He's got to, I think, work better down low in the offensive zone, controlling the puck, protecting the puck, chewing up some zone time with that puck. So, I think with Max being out, we're going to see him get a little bit more of an opportunity here, and we'll see what he does with it. But I think it's more his shape. If he was a little slimmer, I think he'd be a lot quicker, and he wouldn't have as much of a problem getting there to do what he should do.
Yeah, well, his shape seems to be round, as opposed to rectangular, which can be an issue. I think foot speed is also a bit of a problem.
Do you think
but he's looked better.
Is he going to be asked to slim down, you think, in the offseason?
Well, that was something that Michel Therrien did speak about, that the conditioning was an issue when he came from Anaheim to Montreal, and he said that he's addressed that, he's worked hard at it. But Chris, is that him being out of shape, is that just coming from the Western Conference that's considered to be heavy, that you need to be, the speed's not as much as a factor as in the East? Yes
and no, and maybe it's how he was used there, and they were okay with that weight, but I just go back to my own situation. He's the same size as me, basically. He might be bigger boned and whatever. But when you're 220 and you're this size, you're not as quick. And Jacques Lemaire, I thought I was okay at 210. He said, no, 202. You're at 202. You're gonna be lean. You're gonna be faster. You're gonna get there. You're gonna have more endurance. And he stuck to that. I got my weight down. I stayed at 202. I had the best year of my career. I scored 21 goals with him. I don't know if I would have done that being at 207 because I thought I needed that extra weight. Mm-hmm. I was surprised what a difference it made in my skating ability, my quickness, and my endurance.
Do you think that they should have looked to Hamilton before kind of deciding to head into the playoffs with Smith-Pelly, Flynn, and Mitchell?
It's not like they've got an all-star roster in Hamilton. Hamilton is life and death to make the playoffs. I don't think there's a ton of great forwards down there. He made the judgment that he had to go looking for NHL level talent. So we'll see how it works out. Although the two Buffalo guys, I don't know.
Well, to me, Michael Bournival, he's a guy that has great skill. He's a hard worker. He really wants to be a team player, but he just can't finish. That was the biggest problem with him, and that's why I think he's in Hamilton, and that's why they looked other places to find some talent, to have some guys. But as you mentioned, Flynn and Torrey Mitchell, to me, are almost the exact same players, and they don't necessarily do too much. With Mitchell, we did see glimpses, especially on the face-off circle, but besides that, you know, they haven't really been all that overwhelming. And to me, last year in the playoffs, that fourth line was a huge difference maker, and I don't necessarily see that fourth line right now being, you know, that energy line or that difference in a game.
Well, Mitchell is Manny with two functioning eyes, right? And he's a face-off specialist.
Buffalo, Hamilton, same thing, right? Oh, Hamilton may be a little better.
Yeah, well, it's north more hockey country.
So Pierre Parenteau seems to have stepped up his game lately. What is he doing now that he hasn't been doing the rest of the season?
I think he's trying to prove himself, and you know, in fairness for him, he had 2 concussions in a short amount of time, and even coming into the season last year was not a very good year for him in Colorado, and he wanted to redeem himself. And maybe that's what it is now, that now's the pressure time, it's crunch time, and you want to be playing, and all the guys say this, your best hockey going into the playoffs, so you have a little bit more confidence. So maybe that's also too, just his mindset has changed, that he wants to have a, you know, a different view, that different way people view him, that he can be, you know, a productive player.
Well, a guy, again, coming off, he wasn't overly physical to begin with, so coming back from 2 concussions, short amount of time, then you get back in the lineup. In order to score goals in this league, you have to pay a price to some degree. You have to go to those dirty areas, and he's a guy that there wasn't much for that even before the concussion. So coming back, it takes a while to get your confidence. Again, this kid, he's got to look for openings. He's got to look for the seams, the offensive zone to get open, to be able to get good, clear shots on net.
So Alex Galchenyuk's on track to end the season with close to 50 points. What does he have to do to continue this success into the playoffs?
You got to keep skating with the puck. You got to keep getting open. You got to keep being aggressive. All those things, you know. First couple years here, he was in the league. It was kind of feeling out process. You know, you're going to play center, you're going to play wing. He was on the wing. I think he was a little tentative his first couple years. You know, the physical play, and now this year I've seen a lot more pushback from him, more intensity from him. And with Max Pacioretty being out now, and Alex missing the playoffs last year at the beginning there, he was out with that knee injury. He's one of the guys that I think needs to step up this year for the Canadiens to be successful, a la Lazella last year and René Bourque.
I don't think we'll see the best of him until he's at center, as far as I'm concerned. I think his first instinct is as a playmaker, and that's what he's best at. But for now, he definitely has to elevate, regardless of whether Pacioretty is in. Galchenyuk has to play, you know, has to play up to his talent level, basically.
And he's a guy that puts a lot of pressure on himself too, that I think if he's able to, you know, maybe sort of clear that part of him out of his head, that he doesn't overthink, that he would be a lot more successful. Sometimes I think too that he makes one too many moves, that if he just didn't do that, it would have resulted in a goal. So I think it's kind of just shifting his mindset to go out there, have fun, as cliche as that sounds.
He instinctively makes the head fakes on every play. It's like watching the Parkinson's hockey league or something.
Thanks for watching. That's it for this week's show. We'll see you next week on Hockey Inside Out.